Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Shields, and today I've got a guest from a long time ago. I think maybe it was a couple of years ago, right, Paul, that I had you on the episode last?
It would have been now, a few years ago.
Right.
Many moons ago, but mate, great to be back.
Well, it's awesome to have you back. This is Paul Wright. He's a physical therapist and former owner of multiple allied healthcare clinics in Australia, as you could tell from his accent. Now he's the author of an Amazon bestseller, How to Run a 1-Minute Practice, founder of Practiceology, Health Business Freedom Program, and he's helped thousands of allied health business owners across the world, which is pretty amazing. You know, I like to think that I can have a significant impact in America, but you're reaching out across the world, man. Congratulations and thank you.
What we work out, Nathan, is business. Regardless of where you do it, and regardless of, there are fine differences in your insurances or other things, but people buy the same regardless of where they are in the world, and health professionals are health professionals. We all have the same struggles. So it doesn't matter where you are. We've got the same issues no matter where you are in the world.
I could see that. Yeah. You recently had me on your podcast. What was the name of the podcast I was on?
It's the Practiceology 7 Questions in 7-Minute podcast, Nathan. And you nailed it in 7 minutes.
That's right. I came in right in 7 minutes. The 7 minutes podcast. You do another podcast for paid members that has much more content. So first of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. And I'm excited to return the favor because you brought up something during the course of our conversations that you could share with my audience. And I'm excited to look into it. Just for those who haven't heard your story before, if you could give us a quick synopsis before we get into that. Of course, people can listen to the previous episode and find a longer story in regards to your experience as a private practice physical therapist in Australia. But bring us up to speed a little bit about where you came from, what you're doing now.
Mate, I'm obviously from Australia. I grew up in a small country town, Nathan, out in the Australian outback, which is about a big place, but 7 hours or so northwest of Sydney, Australia. No physiotherapists, physical therapists in my hometown. So what does a kid do? I like sport. So I thought, well, I'll be a physical education teacher. Sort of knew. So I went and studied to be a physical education teacher at Newcastle University. And I think we all experienced this. I had an entrepreneurial streak, and I think I realised early in my teaching course that I may have trouble working for myself. And then I met a physio, Nathan. I didn't even know what a physio was. I'd never even heard of a physical therapist. And I met a physical therapist at a party, and she was telling me about anatomy and physiology and injuries and rehab. And I thought, wow, I like that. I'd like to do that. So I applied to Sydney University as a mature age student to do their physiotherapy course. You know those forks in the road, Nathan? You get those decision moments, those pivotal points. Yeah. And I remember sitting on Newcastle Beach, beautiful beach, Newcastle Beach. And I've got the acceptance to Sydney Uni in front of me, and I'm sitting there and thinking, do I stay down the teaching path? And I would have been a good teacher, but I had long holidays, this sort of business. Or do I go to Sydney, which I didn't really want to do and study to be a physio. So I took the latter, ended up in Sydney, graduated 4 years later, hardest 4 years of my life, Nathan, studying compared to the phys ed course, which was like tennis in the morning and cricket in the afternoon. And then off to Sydney Uni, it was a flog. Anyway, but got there, opened my first practices pretty quickly. Ended up opening, I had 6 practices at one stage. My claim to fame, I didn't go to them because I was running them remotely. And
nice. And
I think the turning point, there's always these turning points, Nathan. And I don't know if I mentioned in the last podcast, was I'm treating patients in my practice, and I'm there early and I'm there late. You see the sun come up over the horizon, you see the sun go down, that sort of deal. And this bus kept going past, Nathan. And on the side of the bus, it says, why most small businesses fail and what to do about it. Is the words on the side of the bus. And this bus must have gone past 1,000 times. And I'm getting better now at picking up the universe. Now the universe is telling me something. I wasn't good then. And I think the universe must have thought, this guy's thick. I've parked the bus out there 1,000 times and he hasn't done anything about it. But finally, I contacted the phone number on the side of the bus, and this was in the early 80s or 90s. And it led me to a Michael Gerber seminar who wrote the E-Myth. Oh, yeah. And then I started my E-Myth journey.
Yes.
And that sort of led me to opening the practices. So that's kind of started. And then I sold the businesses. And there's a lesson there. Everything's for sale. Your job as a business owner is to build it so you can sell it.
That's right.
Whether you want to sell or not's a different thing, but getting it ready to sell. And then I started teaching other owners how I did it and how they can run great businesses. That's where this whole Practiceology and 1 Minute Practice kind of started from. It came from all of that.
That's great. Well, it's cool to hear that got to such a level and then we're able to sell. The thing that excited me about the content we're talking about today is you said, hey, I've got this thing. It's called the 7 Critical Mistakes, which reduce profits and increase stress and chain you to your business. And I thought, well, who doesn't want to hear about that?
Oh, you've got right? What someone said to me, why don't failures give seminars? Right. Now, you always hear from successful people, but I want to hear from people that mucked it up. So this is the mistakes. Like, you've got to learn what people do wrong because you can learn from that.
Yeah. And I tell people who listen, if I do ever get to meet them or talk to them via email, if you will, the people I'm talking to and interviewing on my podcast are successful owners. What a lot of times we don't cover is the failures that got them to that point. They weren't born successful business owners, and not everything went hunky-dory the entire time. They went through a lot of muck and mud to get to the point where they are. And that's the reason why I bring them on the podcast. People like you and everyone else that I've had is to share, hey, they have some successful actions that they're willing to share with you because they've been through it before. And so that's why people like you are such vital resources.
I've got a classic for you. I'll get to it in the first mistake because it's a gem. It's a world beater.
All right. Why not? Let's do it.
All right. So you want to get started? So mistake number one of the classics, it's failing to understand, Nathan, the true role of your business. You think about why we started our businesses, like for health business out there. Why did you start it? I mean, I started mine because I wanted freedom and I wasn't a great employee. Like, I'm chronically unemployable, as a lot of owners are. I don't following other people's systems well, and I argue with that won't work. So that you've got to be in charge of your own business. But then, like most people, and as Gerber pointed out in the book, you get to the stage where you're doing all the business stuff, but you're also seeing the patients, and when you add those two things together, there's no time. So, and you then end up where your team members are making more money than you, and your life's a nightmare. So what we sort of look at, Nathan, is in this, the role of your business is to give you more life. That's the job of it. It's to give you the decisions and the ability to make choices regarding your own destiny. And one of the things you should do first, or I suggest you do, is do what we call the freedom score. And the freedom score is simply look at a typical week in your practice and how many hours do you physically have to be there treating clients. Like, that's your freedom score, so many hours per week. And we ask people in our seminars, how many, what's your freedom score? And they'll say, 60. I had one guy that was over 80 in a seminar once. And then think about how many team members they've got. If you're doing 30, 40, 50 hours a week with patients, there's just no time left to run the business, to grow it. So this is the classic problem.
And that freedom's the higher the worse, the lower the better, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of inverse, right?
Yeah, we try and get our owners, and I got down to 0. Yeah. So the goal, I always believe, this is my personal preference. My preference was to be 0. I wanted everyone else to be busy and me doing nothing. And so my freedom score, I wanted to be 0. And what that gave me, Nathan, is the chance to decide what I did any day. I could go to the office if I wanted to. I could go to work. I could play with the kids. But I was still making money regardless. Now, most people don't think like that. They don't think the job of my business was to give me a low freedom score so I could do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. Could I have made more money, Nathan? Well, probably. I could have consulted more. I could have, but I didn't want to. What we then get caught up with is the idea of the real nature of our business. And the biggest mistake I can tell you here is by not understanding this, I got caught up in a business or practice that was pumping, Nathan. This was a fantastic practice. I was a subtenant of a fitness centre. So I had my practice inside a gym, great gym in Sydney. And it was going gangbusters. Now I was making $300,000-400,000 a year out of this practice. Wow. So it was good. It was good. I get a phone call Thursday night from a client, patient of mine. He said, Paul, I've got some news for you. I've heard on the grapevine that the owner of the gym hasn't paid rent for 3 months to his landlord. Ooh, that's not good. So I spoke to the gym owner, my mate. He said, I'll talk about it tomorrow. So I come into the clinic the next day. And I had my rent check, days in written checks. I had my rent check for him for the month, and I'm about to hand him the check. And he said, friend of mine, he said, mate, just hold on to that check. All right, this is going south. I said, this is not good. So back up I go. I hire a truck, Nathan. I cancel all the patients for the day. I hire a truck and I pack everything into the truck.
Yeah.
And I'm out. This is the day after. This is the Friday. And at about 5 o'clock Friday, everything's in the truck. Everyone is saying to me, Paul, what are you doing? We're going to be open again Monday. The gym's going to be open and there's a new buyer that's going to take over. I said, well, I'll tell you what. When they buy it, I'll bring everything back.
Mm-hmm.
Mate, so I drove off about 5 o'clock that afternoon. I can tell you, Nathan, I never once again set foot inside that practice.
Mm.
It shut. Within 24 hours, I'd lost a business.
Yeah.
Now, what's the lesson? Well, I was relying on someone else to provide for my lease, so I was reliant on someone. So I never again. Well, I did, but I had other practices outside gyms that I was the landlord of.
Sure.
And eventually, I bought my premise, so I didn't have a middleman in the middle.
Yeah.
So what's the lesson? The true role of your business is to sell it. Don't rely on someone else to make sure your business is going to survive. Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing I learned, Nathan, is a concept in business called current bank and future bank. Current bank businesses are ones where, let's say I rent a space inside a medical centre. Mm-hmm. It might do well. Like this business was a current bank business that I had. A lot of money, good business.
Sure.
But because I was reliant on someone else's tenancy, it would have been hard to sell it. So it didn't have a great future bank basis. It didn't have a longevity. So be careful about your business model. You can go into a medical center and test the water, or go into a gym and test the market, build a database. Mm-hmm. But that's a current bank business model.
Yeah.
You're going to have trouble selling that. So look at the longer term options and eventually move out of that to your own premise, because otherwise you might get stuck like I got. So the true role of your business, give you more life, and be careful about someone else's tenancy.
Yeah. I talk about it a number of times with Eric Miller, a financial advisor I have on the podcast, and the way he describes it. And I don't think it's much different than what you're saying, but the role of your business is to support the household. And you're saying the role of the business is to support your life, right? Yeah. And what you want. And sometimes I think if you look on the organizational chart, you would put the household or yourself at the top, right? And the business feeds up into it. And if the business isn't feeding into your personal role and purpose and your family and your household's role and purpose, then it's not serving its purpose and needs to be reconsidered. And that's where I think a lot of owners get stuck, is they think they are that the business is the overarching owning entity. And it's not, and you're a slave to the business. No, you work the business so that it is a slave to you and your family. Yeah,
the business job is to give you the funds, to give you the quality of life that you and your family want.
Right.
That's its job. And if you get more into it than that, I think you lose out. And I think what happens, Nathan, to burnout and stress and other things, they come a lot because you've got a certain purpose or vision for your life, and your own aspirations and what you want to, what sort of father you want to be, what sort of mother you want to be, what sort of sister, whatever that. But your business then takes you away from all that, and if it dominates you and doesn't let you do that, that's where you get burnt out, because you have this conflict. And that's I never did that. The business's job was to serve me,
right,
and as a result, the family, and that's what it did. That's how I run my business. Still do it now.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And so to go into number 2, how do you keep from falling in love with that? And maybe that's where, and I'm sorry, I took the words out of your mouth, but how do you keep from saying, but I love treating patients and I want to be here. And this, I think I'm fulfilling my role as a technician and as a physical therapist, doing the hardcore physical therapy.
Okay. Well, I don't mind you doing that, but provided it's your choice and there's it, like, you have freedom to choose if you go or not. You roster your time off. You schedule your diary. If your daughter's got something on, you cancel the list. As long as you can do that. That's. But if it's dominating you, I can't do this because I miss patients or something. Then you've got a problem. But But that falls into our second mistake, which is falling in love with your product.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I mean by that? Why did you become a therapist? Usually because you wanted to help people, or you wanted to be a physical therapist, or like you wanted to do it.
Sure.
But there's a fundamental mistake with that, Nathan, and I fell into it. How do we know the market even wants that? Like we fall in love with I fell in love with the idea of being a physio. That was what I fell in love with. But I didn't do any research on whether there was demand for it, whether there was a possibility of a future. I just liked it, so I wanted to do it. But the market doesn't care what we want to do. There are two drivers in any business, Nathan. There's available market, meaning you've got enough people that need your service,
right? And
there's available labour supply. Is there enough people that can deliver the service? If you haven't got those two things, you're going to be chained to your business. So you see it when people open a practice. And let's say they open a practice, using Australia as an example. Someone decides to open a practice in the middle of the outback in Australia. Now, they might have a town and there might be some people, so there might be a need for that service. So there's available market, possibly. So you think there would be. But staffing that business, available labour supply, you're going to have trouble getting therapists that want to cover the middle of the outback to do the service. So you're going to be chained to that business. So you've got to make sure those two things, and the market doesn't care what you want, Nathan. Your job as a therapist is to find out what the market wants and then provide the service that does it. What's my favourite example? I love Shark Tank. Entrepreneurs should be watching. You watch Shark Tank. Yeah.
Love Shark Tank.
And because entrepreneurs love Shark Tank because they get the idea of a business model. But you see the problem there all the time. My favourite Shark Tank episode, the guy turns up, he had the arm, he built a product that was like a pad, Nathan, that went under the arm of your shirt for guys to stop your shirt getting sweaty. Like it's an arm pad. Okay.
Sure.
And it was his product. And he pitched it to the sharks and they asked him all about it. And they said, how long have you been doing it for? About 10 years. How many have you sold? A couple of thousand. So over the course of 10 years, he sold a couple of thousand. The sharks wouldn't touch it. They said, I don't think the market wants it. They wouldn't want it. But they interviewed the guy out the back after they knocked him back. And they said, what are you going to do now? I'm going to stick with this. I believe in this. I believe in the product. See, here's an example. He'd fall in love with his product, but at no time do you think, what did the market want? So your job is to find out what the market wants. You might love treating elbow pain in one-armed golfers. That might be your passion. You love it, Nathan. That's your go. But if there's not enough one-armed golfers out there, you're not going to do any good. So don't fall in love with your market. Sorry, don't fall in love with your product. Don't fall in love with physical therapy. Fall in love with the market. What's their desperate problem? What do they need? Do they need migraine services? Do they need elbow pain solution? What do they need? And you might have and hopefully it marries up with what you want to do. But and I was lucky, Nathan. My passion for business education and teaching health business owners matched up with a need for that service when I started 10 so years ago. Yeah. So it married beautifully. Yeah. But if I'd run some early seminars in business for health businesses and owners and no one came, I did some podcasts and no one listened. If the market didn't want it, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
So don't.
You just got to be flexible in that regard.
Yeah.
And also survey the market.
Your job is to find out what the market wants and fill it. That's the role of your business. The market doesn't care what you want to do. A guy came up to his seminar once, Nathan. He says, Paul, I want to open, I think it was 6 practices. I want to open 6 practices in the northern suburbs of Sydney. He came to me. I said, oh. I said, do they need, is there a market for that? Oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure they need that. Oh, okay. No research. You just wanted to do it. And I said, and how are you going to staff it? What do you mean? I said, well, how are you going to find the available labour? Oh, I'll just advertise. Like in the middle of the biggest staffing crisis in the history of the Australian Eastern Seaboard, this guy wants to, because the key words, Nathan, I want to. I want to open it. The market doesn't care what you want to do. Fill the market. So don't fall in love with your product. Fall in love with the market because the market doesn't care what you want.
Yeah.
That's a big mistake.
Yeah, definitely. And I love your third one because it's something that I think a lot of people have to get over. I notice it as well, and I have to tell myself, listen, it doesn't have to be exactly correct. Like if even 80 to 90% of what I'm expecting gets rolled out, that's enough. So tell us a little bit about number 3.
So mistake number 3 I think it follows on our training, Nathan. I think where if you muck up a manipulation, something you can hurt someone. So you've got to be technically good. So I think we want to be perfect in what we do. So the mistake number 3 is falling victim to perfectionist syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And that manifests itself in a lot of health business owners in a lot of different ways. But one of my mentors told me once, Paul, it's better to be 100% or 80% and out the door rather than 100% and in the drawer. And what he's saying is we're better off putting an 80% product out there. At least it's out there.
Right.
Rather than mucking around with that last 20%,
mm-hmm.
and it sits in the drawer and no one sees it. You see it all the time. Let's say I'm producing a knee rehab program. Mm-hmm. So I've packaged a great knee rehab program. But a lot of us will be worried about launching it or promoting it or putting it out there. They'll want to just fine tune it a bit. They want to just tweak it. They want to there's a couple of things I want to finish on it.
Yeah.
And by the time they do that, Nathan, someone else has done it, or the moment's passed. And I think too, let's say you're going to do this knee program, but up the road from you is the superstar of knee programs. Like this therapist up the road wrote the book on knee problems, and I can't put that out there because Brian up the road there will see it, and Brian, it's got to be as good as Brian's, because what will Brian think?
Yeah.
So we don't do it.
Yeah.
But I think to help you with this, you don't. Another mentor told me, a lot of mentors. A mentor said to me, Paul, you don't have to be the best in the world. You've just got to be the best in their world.
I like that.
So they mightn't even know who Brian is.
Right.
My client list, my people coming to my seminar or reading my ebook or watching my YouTube video, they mightn't even know who Brian is.
Mm-hmm.
But I can be the best in their world. And I think, and the other expression I really like, I love these little expressions, but one of them's, to the blind man, the one-eyed man is king. so you don't have to be a superstar, Nathan. Yeah. You've just got to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I think, and my favourite example of that, I did a lot of lecturing in the fitness industry back in my early days, and and part of it was an anatomy course.
Okay.
So I'm the speaker, I'm the mentor in this anatomy course, I'm the teacher. And lo and behold, in my anatomy course, who should be in the audience but my guru, my physiotherapy university anatomy guru.
Oh, really?
Was doing the fitness course. So she comes along to do the fitness course.
Wow. And
here I am up the front.
Yeah.
And I see her in the audience, and I go, no, you just think, and I'm talking, and you second guess everything you say. Every attachment, everything was wrong. I'm sure I was saying everything wrong.
Right.
And I'm thinking about it. But as I went further and further into that course, no one asked her any questions. No one worried about her. They were all, I was the king. I was the king of the room.
Right.
And it was instructive for me that they didn't care. They didn't know I was the king, because they were the one-eyed men, or I was the one-eyed man. They were the blind people.
To a group of blind men.
And the other thing, mate, with that, don't wait for your association to anoint you as the knee specialist or the back specialist. Or I know you can. There's in some countries, you've got to be careful with the word specialist, but you can be the expert in whatever you market yourself to be the expert in. Don't wait for your association to anoint you as the migraine guru of physical therapy. Yeah. Anoint yourself, position yourself as that person. Right. You can do that, do the videos, write the ebook, do the seminars, do the work, and you can position yourself as the expert. Don't wait for the association to anoint you. It's too slow.
Right. Yeah, a phrase that we commonly used between my partner and I was, done is better than perfect.
And it's so right. Reid Hoffman, I think one of the founders of LinkedIn, one of his quotes, if you aren't embarrassed, by the first version of your product,
Right.
you've launched too late.
Right.
So if you aren't embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. That means put something out there and see if it gets any traction. See if anyone wants to do it. Yeah. And if it does get some traction, then fix it up.
Mm-hmm.
But to hold off a launch of something for 2 years to get it right. And there's a concept in business, Nathan, you'd know, the old MVP, minimal viable product.
Right.
What's the minimum viable thing you can put out in the marketplace to see if it's got some traction, to see if anyone wants it?
Right.
We did it, Nathan, with we've got programs for front desk training and referral, all these different things. But when we started doing them, let's say the front desk program, if we weren't sure if that was going to sell, before we went and produced the whole program, we did a seminar. So we did a 1-day event that was front desk training for health professions, and we put that on. And if we got lots of registrations, this has got some legs. Mm-hmm. So then we hired the video guy. We videoed the day and produced that program because there was enough market for it. We knew, but if we did the seminar and no one registered, cancel the video guy, cancel editing, cancel the program.
Move on.
but test it, minimal viable product.
Right.
Anyway, I hope that gets your head around this perfectionism.
Definitely. Well, the fourth one, it's just the next step. If you have read E-Myth Revisited, I mean, this is where it starts, right?
Yeah, you've got to have tight internal systems. That was how the whole 1 Minute Practice book started, and everything came about it actually came about, Nathan, from a spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. So when I started my businesses, I wanted certain things to happen in a certain order, but if I wasn't there, I needed a way to know they were all happening.
Yeah.
So I started producing what I called a new patient register. And one of the classics was the written report, which I talked about in the previous episode of our podcast, the written report that every new patient gets that recommends how many consults they're going to have and make sure those are booked at the same time. So if you need to see me once a week for 4 weeks, that was going to be 4. Mm-hmm. And then, so that plan had 4 consults on it. And did they book all 4? So I wanted somewhere to track that. Mm-hmm. And that became a new patient register. But that's what you need to think about in your business is, what are the systems? What are the things that have to happen in order, in specific order in your business for it to be successful? Mm-hmm. But not only that, how can you check and measure that it's done even if you're not there?
Right.
That's the missing link. Because how often does it happen? Let's say you hire a new therapist. They get lots of new assessments, but then you look at their diary and a month later, their diary is still really patchy or empty. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you think, hang on, they got 20 new patients. Where have they all gone? But unless you saw that did they do a report? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. How many consults were they recommending? Let's say that therapist might have been saying to people, look, see how you go, Nathan, and give me a call in a month and we'll check in. That's not uncommon. But if you don't know what's happening and that person's not coming back and they disappear. So you've got to have a way to track it. So that's what we started with this. Mm-hmm. That's how we started the 1 Minute Practice platform, was what have we got to measure? Was it done? Did they book all 4? How many were recommended? That's kind of the foundation of this whole thing. But you've got to do that with everything in your business: follow-up phone calls, cancellation policy, product sales, even to the point of, this is how you apply for leave. This is what happens if you're sick. The internal systems in the business.
It goes back to the title of this whole material, all the material that you're talking about here, in that it helps increase your profits and reduces stress. You have those systems in place, right? When the systems aren't codified and they're not established and well done, then all the stress is on the owner to come up with all the answers, and you become the answer man or the answer woman, and that leads to a lot of stress.
One of the keys to, Nathan, this is a Gerberism. Remove discretion at the operating level of your business. It's one of the keys of business, removing discretion. Let's give an example. Let's say, like this written action plan, like a written action plan that the patient gets at the end of the assessment.
Yeah.
What they've got, how many consults they're going to take, and that's a written piece of paper. If you're doing this well, that's not negotiable. So that's you're removing the number of non-negotiable and non-discretionary steps. So that happens to every new patient, no exceptions.
Right.
Now, I think I mentioned it in the last podcast, but it's worth telling again anyone who forgot it. So what I would do with my teams, so guys, every new patient gets this sheet, not negotiable, because I'm removing the number of non-negotiable or negotiable steps. So this is not discretionary. Everyone gets it. And I said to them, can anyone give me an example where a patient wouldn't get this sheet? You know, it's summary of what they've got, what they're going to do, the treatments, you know, the plan.
Sure.
Are they saying, what if they've got to go and see a specialist? Well, no, that's still on the plan. Their plan is to go and see the specialist. They've still got a plan. What if we can't help them? Well, you just say you can't help them. No future bookings required. That's still there. Okay. So they couldn't come up with one. I said, okay, I'll give you one. There's only one time I'll allow this. And they said, what is it? The patient dies during the consultation. The only time I'll accept it.
Even then, you probably should write.
Yeah. Just before you go, Mrs. Johnson. Yeah. So, so now it got a laugh, and I wanted it to get a laugh. But so I had my new patient register set up from then, and not a few days later, I see a new patient's name in there, and an action plan yes or no was on our register. Action plan yes or no, and there was a no on it. So Mrs. Johnson did an action plan. Now, from 100 and something miles away, I see this. It's like a red flag to me, Nathan. Hang on.
Right.
So I contact the therapist. Hey, Brian, sad news about Mrs. Jones yesterday. Well, what do you mean? Well, I saw the register. She obviously died during the consultation. That's tragic. Oh, no, but I just ran out of time. Did some part of our discussion last week not make sense? Was there something in there? This is the most important thing. You don't have a choice about doing this. This is non-discretionary. Oh, sorry, mate. It won't happen again. Now, if it did happen again, it didn't. But if it did happen again, we'd be having another conversation. Is there something we haven't understood about this? And if it happened a third time, the therapist would be gone.
Right.
If I can't get them to do that, what chance have I got of getting them doing anything else? So,
I love how it makes you what you're talking about, leaving things non-negotiable, because reduces the stress again. Like, is this person doing the job or not? And now the conversation is, you didn't do the job. It's very objective. I have to let you go, and we'll find someone else who can. And that objectivity eliminates emotion. It's very clear. It's not, maybe we should give them another try and train them better. No, the training happened and the expectation was set. They made their decision.
You still have to earn the right to sack people. I'm not ruthless. Well, some would say would, but if you put up with that, you'll start putting up with everything. My favourite, Nathan, was I was a stickler for name badges. I'm a name badge freak. I love name badges. Yeah. But it was part of my system for this is not negotiable. Every time you come into the practice, you have your name badge on, not negotiable.
Right.
And there are some non-negotiable things. That was one of them. You've got to have your name badge on. And I said to the guys, if you ever catch me without my name badge on, I'll give you all $20. So, and over the years I had the practice, it never happened. I always had my name badge. Right. So I turned up there one day, and one of my senior managers, he'd forgotten his name badge, and he walks past and he's trying to turn side on so that I couldn't sort of see it. So he's doing this business, and I knew it. I saw it early in the day, and I didn't say anything. I'd sit on this, and just as I was about to leave for the day, his name badge had appeared. It was on. And hey, well done today, mate. Really, really good stuff. Oh, by the way, I noticed how you fixed your name badge. Good on you. Well done. And I left. Now, there was a couple of subliminal things there. Wright doesn't miss much for a start. I wanted him to know that I knew, but I appreciated what he did. But I liked the fact that he knew he had to find it and get it fixed, because it meant my systems were working. Right. Was it Norman Schwarzkopf, Nathan, that said shiny shoes save lives? Desert Storm. If you can't get your soldiers to shine their shoes, what chance have you got of getting them to hold a rifle and do these serious things? So my name badges were my shiny shoes. Oh, I like it. If I can do that, I can get them to wear a name. I can get them to do an action plan. I can get them to make a follow-up phone call. I can get them to say the right things in a consultation. But you've got to. Now, some people say, Paul, you're micromanaging. Yes, I'm micromanaging certain processes, but everything else they can do whatever they like. They organise the treatments. They do what they do their own stuff. But there are these fundamental things that have to happen.
Mm-hmm.
If they do that right, I know everything else will be okay.
Yeah, gotcha.
So internal systems, highly important.
Yeah. Number 5 is something that I learned over time. It took me probably I want to say around about at least 8 to 10 years before I finally walked into step number 5. Finally.
Mistake is using your accountant to tell you your business P&L.
Mm-hmm.
And no disrespect to accountants. You've got to have an accountant and they've got to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
But think the job of your accountant, really, make sure you stay out of jail and are compliant.
Mm-hmm.
Really, that's what my accountant does. Their job's not to really give me a down and dirty profit and loss for my business. Their job's to reduce my tax and keep me out of jail. So it's not their job.
Mm.
And you see it all the time, Nathan, when your accountant does your tax for you, they'll do a great job. You might have gone to the conference in Australia. You pack up and do the Australian conference. The accountant will write the whole thing off, but that was really just a guise for a 2-week holiday in Australia where you surfed your heart out and had a great time away from the Alaskan sun.
Yeah.
And so that goes into your P&L. So there's a lot of things in your P&L that aren't really down and dirty business expenses. They're deductible, but they're not the real deal.
Mm.
The other problem is they rarely take into account your personal contribution to consulting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's because how do you determine the wage you get? Most times the accountant will determine what wage you should draw out of the business from a tax perspective.
Right.
It's not a reflection of how much consulting work you're doing.
No.
So what we like our clients to do is to look at their freedom score. So how many hours are they consulting each week in the practice as a therapist?
Okay.
And just multiply that number by a replacement cost.
Mm.
Let's say it costs you $50 an hour to get another therapist to do that work. You use that figure in your down and dirty P&L because it reflects then your consulting wage. And
when you say consulting, do you mean actually the patient care that they provide?
Yeah, your physical care with patients.
Okay.
So if I'm spending 10 hours a week in front of patients with patients,
right,
and it costs me $50 an hour to replace me as a therapist if I wanted someone else to do it, then in my P&L, down and dirty P&L, I've got $500 a week as my own consulting wage.
Yeah, for you.
I don't want to blind you with science, but that's not what your accountants. That's not what you're paying yourself. It's just it's the arbitrary reflection of your consulting. Because where that came from, Nathan, it was the only way we could show an owner of a practice a down and dirty profit and loss. It's the only way we could show them that if we drop their consulting, so we drop their owner consulting wage, we could still increase or maintain their profit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't drop their hours. They'd be too reluctant. I said, but look, if we drop it 10 hours a week, we can still look at the profit we've got. We can drop it 20 hours a week. Look what it does now. It's do you want to make this amount of money and do 60 hours work a week with patients, or do you want to make the exact same amount of money and do no patients, get another couple of therapists on? What would you like to do, Brian?
Right.
But so it's a different P&L. It's not the same as your accountant's version. It's a different P&L.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, down and dirty, off the books.
Yeah, it's important to look through those numbers because that's a very common stressor for PT owners. You've dealt with it thousands of times to get out of the patient care because they fear that they are going to lose money on the back end of that transition, and inevitably, you've had more experience than I have consulting healthcare professionals, but have you ever seen that go wrong?
Oh, we've sent clients back to work. Don't worry about that. I got a client last week. He's got 6 therapists in his practice and 3 of them resigned in a 1-week period.
Well,
okay. Okay. So well, that's not good. So we look at the P&L now. Now, he could have decided to take his revenue back to here and just accept that and not see any patients. But we decided, no, let's put you back to work here. So we put him back on a 30-hour week roster.
Right.
While we balance the ship again, while we then recruited and pull him out again. The problem, Nathan, is if you're doing 30, 40 hours a week consulting already with patients, you've got no freedom. You've got no coverage. In my business, I sometimes went back and did locums. So I'd come back and do a 2-week if someone was sick.
Oh, okay.
Or, one of my favourites, the time one of our therapists fell off an elephant in Thailand.
Oh, wow.
Which, of course, so he fell off and broke his arm.
It happens.
Happens often. So here come the message. I've fallen off an elephant in Thailand, can't work. So I went back and did a month for him because I could.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't go back as a therapist, Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
I am seeing patients, and I'm technically a therapist, but while I'm there, I'm fixing systems, I'm developing relationships, I'm fine-tuning things that I might have not heard because I was away a little bit.
Right,
so I have a different mentality when I went back into the practices consulting.
Yeah.
I went in as a research student as much as a therapist.
Right.
But if you don't have that, if you're doing 40 hours a week consulting and you've got a sick therapist, something happens to your child, you've got nowhere to go.
Yeah, there's no freedom, no bandwidth there.
Yeah. Anyway, so fix that.
Well, and part of that goes into number 6, with the stories that you just shared, is the only way to keep and maintain yourself out of a situation like the ones that you shared is to have consistent recruitment systems in place.
You've got to always be recruiting, Nathan. We've learned that certainly the last couple of years. Mates uses the analogy of the aeroplane, the airport. He wants therapists circling around his practice, and he's ready to call them in whenever he needs them. So
I gotcha.
He's building a database of therapists. He's got people that might be coming out of uni soon, or who might be moving interstate, or they really want an opportunity. They're not happy where they are, but when something comes up, they wanted the opportunity. So you build your database of potentials. We've got a Practiceology client at the moment who is running monthly mentor sessions for the local university students.
Oh, nice.
Because they're not doing lots of hands-on. So he gets them in once a month. They come in to his practice and he happily mentors them and teaches them, and no money changes hands. He gets their details, and when they graduate, or when they want to work there, they want to work there.
Yeah.
So
my business partner did something very similar in that he offered to the university students or the PT students to do mock interviews.
Yeah.
And so he would say, hey, I'll sit down with you and let's go through an interview session, and I'll share with you maybe how you should word things a little bit differently, how to present yourself better, what your strengths and weaknesses look like as someone who's actually looking for physical therapists. And inevitably, he's going to find the rock stars amongst that kind of.
We did a whole program. We've got a whole recruitment program for this, and I interviewed one of our leading educators in physiotherapy in Australia, and I loved it when he said, "I didn't really do the lecturing for the courses. I did it for the exposure to physiotherapists." So he'd do his course and he'd be the expert at the front. And we have a vacancy, by the way. If anyone's interested, let us know. Yeah. And he never had to advertise because he always wanted people to work for him. So, and the other thing with that, Nathan, never think that people are irreplaceable. Everyone's going to leave at some stage. I remember one of my mentors told me about the train journey analogy. You're on the train. This is your train. You've got the train of your business, and people will get on at certain stops, and then they'll get off at certain stops. They're not going to stay the whole journey. You're running the train, and your job is to get them where they want to go, and then they get off, and then put the next people on. You're always going to be doing that. But one of the problems that we have with recruitment, Nathan, health business owners often want to be liked. Right. They want to be popular. That's true. That's it's not impossible. It's a challenge if you're trying that out while you're running a business. I'm not saying you'd be unlikable, but you've got to work out, do you want to be liked or do you want to be respected? And whilst they didn't like me pushing the name badges or like me having that was just the way it was, but they respected my decisions and my ability to make those choices if they want to work in the organisation. Right. So don't kid yourself trying to be liked, because it's not worth it. It's impossible. How can you always be liked, Nathan, when you're the one determining their wages, their holidays, their uniforms? It's not feasible. What you signed up for once you became an owner. You decided, and the trade-off for that, you sit at the front of the plane, you decide when you go to work and when you don't. You have choices. Whereas if you don't want those choices, then you should just be an employee, because it's much easier. That's true. And I was only challenged once, Nathan. I was in a staff meeting once in my practices, and I was telling them all what they're going to do, normal sort of stuff. I was making plans. And one of them said, hey, Paul, while we're doing all this, what are you going to be doing? It was a straight play on the fact that I wasn't seeing any patients. What are you going to be doing? I said, well, that's a good question. I said, I'm going to be doing whatever I want to be doing. Mm-hmm. But I tell you what, if I come back to work, if I decide to come back as a therapist, whose job am I going to take? and he goes, yeah, fair enough.
I get
it. He got the message. Right. No one's irreplaceable.
Right.
That's the plan. You got to come. And if you are in a position where you are held hostage by someone, let's say you've got an admin person who knows everything and you know nothing. Let's say they if something happened to Mary, I'm a dead duck.
Right.
Okay, you ring up Mary tomorrow and you say, Mary, you're not doing anything at front desk tomorrow. I'm going to come in there with a video camera and I'm going to stand behind you and you're going to show me everything.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's what I did. I did in my practices once. I got so reliant on a front desk team member.
Right.
We did exactly that. For one day, I got her out the back with an old handy cam, Nathan.
Right.
And I've got in lots of 1 and 2 minute videos, show me how you do this. Show me how you do that. And by the end of the day, I knew everything.
That's right. Yeah.
Anyway, and even if I never used the footage, it didn't matter. I had it. So everything can be systemized.
Right. And tell me about number 7 here, the last one in your group. What is that?
A mistake we make is not packaging our product or packaging our services. Mm-hmm. We deliver physical therapy sessions, or we deliver chiropractic sessions. We deliver sessions, treatments.
Right.
But people don't buy treatments; they buy an outcome. They buy an outcome. So let's say I'm doing a Achilles tendon program for runners. Mm-hmm. So you call it, the pain-free runners program. Mm-hmm. So you package what you're doing as a program, and it's 5 weeks, and it's so many sessions. But by not doing that, if you're doing the same thing, possibly by doing it sessionally, and just say, you need this number of treatments. Mm-hmm. But once you name it something and package it, Nathan, and call it something, you're the only people that have that. You all of a sudden stop being compared to other people based on just a service. So we had core program for gym, we had the better back program, we had the orthotic program. So all the different programs, name it whatever you like, but once you start doing that, price becomes hard to compare because you're not doing apples to apples comparison anymore. Right. If I've got the XYZ migraine program guaranteed to reduce your migraine by 50% in a month, or it's free, or we stop it, whatever you decide to do, you're the only people who've got that. This is the price for the program. Or you can go up the road and see Brian, who's got more quals than me possibly, but he just does session by session migraines. I'm going to do the migraine free program because it's it's an outcome based program. The other thing packaging does, Nathan, it stops you relying on therapists to deliver it.
Yes.
So because anyone can deliver the migraine program, the package. Right. It's not Brian up the road. It's the practice. And then you also if someone leaves, they can't take the name of the program with them.
Right.
You're protecting your turf in case they do leave.
That was something that, I had Tom DeLonzo Baker on as a guest, and he recognized that same thing, that referring physicians to his practice were referring to him specifically and not to the other therapists. And so when a patient came, they wanted to see him specifically. And so he found one way to combat that was to get his therapists together and say, what can we agree on as far as certain diagnoses or certain joints, if you will, with body parts? How can we treat them and agree to a commonality? You can do other things here and there off to the side, but what's the common core of our treatment for XYZ problem? And as they worked with that over months and years, it really helped to create programs that now they were seeing certain results by certain time periods. And if a patient wasn't, then there was something wrong with them and not necessarily the care that they were providing. And it also allowed him to say, hey, you're going to get the same care from me at our clinic as you would from Joe or Mary. That we have the better shoulder program, if you will. And this is the program that you're going to be in. And it's a 12-week program, and it's 2 times a week, if you will. And having some structure like that really helped him become more free and get consistent results in his patient care.
They say you systemize the routine and humanize the exception.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of businesses, the same thing happens. People say, therapists say, I don't like being structured. I don't like scripts or whatever else. But if you listen to them in a clinic situation, they're saying the same thing over and over again. I'm telling you, they've got scripts. They just might be rubbish.
Right.
So same thing.
Yeah. So that was number 7. Is there anything else you want to, I know you need to go in here in a few minutes. Anything else you want to add before we wrap things up?
Mate, I think that's a good list. I could talk a long time about all these things. The only thing I'd leave you with, though, out of all this, just be careful. One of the big mistakes we make as owners is we put a monetary value on our family time. So we say, like, I could see an afternoon of patients and make $2,000, or I can go to my daughter's swimming carnival. So we do a monetary equation on that. We put a monetary value on our family time.
Is it worth it?
It's a ridiculous analysis. Don't even do it. It's pointless. There's always more patients. There's always more things to do. Just don't start doing that. That doesn't make any sense. And one of my best mates is one of Australia's leading sports physicians. And every year I go away with my mates, and JMO comes along with me, my mate. So we go to this something every year. And he contacts me a day before we were going, and he says, I can't make it, mate. I've got to do this list of clients. I've got this important thing. I said, don't be so ridiculous. You're coming. He said, but I can't, mate. I said, you're coming. And I just pushed him. I said, mate, what are you going to remember? I said, you're going to remember the patients. You're going to remember what we did. And he came, by the way, and we laugh about it now because I say, remember that time I told you what are you going to remember? I said, would you have remembered the patients you saw, or would you remember seeing Wayne go over the handlebars of his quad bike into the river? What are you going to remember?
Right.
And it just brings home. You can't put a monetary value on a family time. It's a bad analysis. And it's a mistake.
Big mistake.
Anyway.
Well, if people want to get a hold of you, Paul, or, we mentioned your book, how else could they get a hold of you?
Mate, if you're interested in Practiceology, we do a demonstration every month on the Practiceology program. Okay. And it's a free webinar. You can just turn up and have a listen to what we're doing. And I've got a special page for Nathan. Just go to mypracticeology.com /Shields, SHIELDS for Nathan. So mypracticeology.com /Shields. That'll take you to our page. You can register for the presentation. We talk a lot about owner consulting wage and how we structure our systems.
Sure.
That's worth doing. If you want to get more information, if you want to get a copy of the book, we've got a great package of over $500 worth of business building resources for less than $20. Go to paulsincrediblegift.com. paulsincrediblegift.com.
Nice.
If you just want a copy of the book, if you want to just get a copy of it, simple read, won't take you more than an hour to read it.
Right.
I didn't want a 1-minute practice book to take 4 days to read.
Right.
Simple read. Doesn't make any sense. Go to 1minutepractice.com /book sales. So 1minutepractice.com /book sales. And if you use the code SHIELDSOS for Nathan, it'll take $15 off the price. So for $4.95 Australian, we'll post you a copy of the book. So
nice. That's great.
So SHIELDSOS at 1minutepracticebooksales.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. My platform of choice is LinkedIn. So if you want to get in contact with me, Paul Wright, Newcastle, Australia, love to chat on LinkedIn.
Well, thanks for taking the time today, Paul. I really appreciate it, man.
I love what you guys are doing. Anytime, coming to Alaska, Nathan. That's what's on my list.
You got to make it up here sometime.
Can you surf in Alaska? That's all I want to know.
You can, but you got to be prepared.
I can imagine.
Take care, man.
Good on you, mate. Thanks for that.